Hello and a very warm welcome to this Axial Talk IT Security webinar. This webinar is called Connected Security, Your Best Defense Against Advanced Threats. It's one of a series of monthly webinars looking at key IT security topics with the help of specialists from global IT security leader Intel Security. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Phone numbers and email addresses are on the screen right now, or you can find us at www.axial.co.uk. If you don't already know us, we're an award-winning provider of innovative network, security and services solutions. Since our launch in 1989, we've just celebrated our quarter century. We've served a wide range of customers from all the sectors you see on your screen and more. We're technically very well resourced and highly capable, which not only allows us to tailor our best-of-breed technologies and solutions to meet individual customers' requirements, but also gives us the capability to provide exceptional pre- and post-sales support. So, that's a quick thumbnail sketch of who we are. There's more on our website, of course, but for now, let me hand you over to this month's specialist for our Axial Talk IT Security webinar.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Anne Aarness, and I work at Intel Security. I focus on one product area that we have. It's called Advanced Threat Defense, so it's more on our network security side of the house. That's moving over to endpoints as well, though, as we'll talk about a little bit today. But we're really focused in the area of advanced threats. And so what I want to talk about today is really how it's not really all about detection. It's not having, the shiny new product that only detects things. If you're really looking at coming up with a solution for an organization or for your environment, really thinking about how that particular solution, while it needs to be good in itself and it needs to be able to detect things, but how really the benefits you get when you then connect that solution with the rest of your existing defenses. So it's not just on an island, but it's working together with your defenses. So what we'll do, talk for maybe a half hour today, and then we'll open things up for questions. You should have a navigation pane or an attendee pane, and there's a note in there or a section in there for questions. So feel free, as I'm talking through the information today, to submit your questions, and then we'll take a few minutes at the end to get them answered. So with that, let's jump in. So when we're talking about advanced malware or advanced threats, most often today, the solution that comes to mind is sandboxing or some form of sandboxing. So essentially what sandboxing does is it takes a file, a piece of code, something, and it's in a secure environment, and most often a virtual environment. What it does is it executes that file. So it detonates that file, and it then observes what that file would do. So just as if, that file were to reach an endpoint, what would it do if it reached the endpoint? So it is a great way to really understand what a malicious file will do, and it's a great way to really add protection to existing solutions that really rely primarily on known malware or known threats and already have a signature. So they're able to determine something because it's been seen before, that signature has been created, and they're able to block it. This is really focused on those threats that a signature does not exist. It may potentially be completely unknown, and then that's why a secure environment to really observe what it will do is really a great way to understand if something is malicious or not. But keeping in mind, great technology, there are a few things to understand when we're talking about, or I should say a few maybe limitations with sandboxing. And again, great technology, but a couple things to keep in mind. For the most part, it's not real time. With that, I'm saying it takes a little while to actually observe a file. So it takes a while to process it, a little more intensive when you're doing that. So you may not get millisecond responses when you're talking about sandboxing. It will oftentimes go off, be examined, be executed, and that file will most often continue on to the end user or the machine that has requested it. So something to keep in mind there. Additionally, it oftentimes lacks scalability. So you do have a very resource-intensive process. And now, if you're looking at, okay, we're increasing our traffic in a certain area, we need to, scale the solution. Most often, solutions are oftentimes protocol-based, or they may need to be tied to an egress or an egress point on the network. So when that happens, oftentimes there might need to be a decision, okay, do we increase it on every area? There's certain areas, certain protocols that we need to prioritize over others. So it may come into some decisions as far as where to scale, and also the number of appliances that it takes to scale if you're looking at an appliance-based solution. The next point in here is alerts versus actions. And that's an important one. So when we are talking about bringing in a new solution, so a dedicated advanced malware solution or some kind of sandboxing solution, oftentimes, and this is one of the results of potentially having something that is not connected to the rest of your security infrastructure. It'll do its work, file will come in, analyze it, and say, hey, I know this is malicious. What happens next? That alert goes up, but are all the solutions that are already in your security infrastructure, are they connected? Do they have the ability to consume that information and then apply it to their policy and thus providing protection or action? Or are they simply producing alerts and someone needs to manually go in, keep an eye on those alerts, understand what they are, and prioritize them manually? So again, more things to think about there when you're bringing in a solution and how it's integrated with the rest of your environment, what the result is. And finally, the last point on here is that with a standalone sandbox solution, just kind of the basic sandboxing technology, for the most part, it's not effective against all malware that's out there. Malware writers have come to understand that organizations are putting in these types of technologies. The sandboxing technology obviously is no longer just something that security companies are using in their research labs. It is deployed on-premise. People are using it. So what they've done is they've understood this, and they have actually modified their malware to be able to evade that sandbox, or essentially stay dormant if it recognizes it's in a virtual environment or some kind of sandboxing environment, and not execute until it is outside and actually on an endpoint or a target system. So they've written in various techniques, various delays, so they will not be found. So again, some things to think about. Again, it's a great technology and it's a great addition for many organizations, but there are things to think about and things to really understand as you are looking to bring this into an organization and what you need to think about. So a couple more things just as we're talking about bringing in potentially additional technologies, additional products, is that, again, operating in a separate, we're calling them here functional silo. It does its job. It does a detection, and it may it do it well, but if that's all it does, if it doesn't communicate that information out, if it doesn't share it in a timely fashion, it's the only thing that knows about it. No other product on the network is going to be able to absorb that information and provide protection. A couple other things to think about as you're bringing in more standalone solutions are just the operational costs of that. Will you need a standalone administrator to both deploy it and maintain it and understand the reports and the information that's being produced? That's another key thing to think about as far as when you're looking at solutions. Do I have the staff to be able to really use this technology in the most appropriate way? Again, more appliances means more management, more upgrades, more physical equipment across the network, and what you need to do and plan for just to maintain those and keep them up to speed, and also just, again, latest versions and what you need to do to keep them running. Is it additional staff, or can your current staff go ahead and take care of those? So a lot of things to think about as you're bringing in additional technologies, but if that technology isn't necessarily a part of your ecosystem. And one of the things I talk about this as far as it being disconnected, wanted to just share a little information with you. This was from the Black Hat Conference. This was the one that was held in the United States last fall. And what we did for the security professionals that were attending, we just asked them a few questions. And we actually did this the year before as well. So we did this 2 years running. And we wanted to understand, okay, is detection really the problem? Is that really what security professionals are faced with, or what's keeping them up at night, what's taking most of their time? But it was interesting, and this was consistent over the 2 years that we asked the same questions. Detection, while a big piece of their day-to-day challenges, isn't the only thing that they have to deal with. And it's quite interesting just to see the spread of what they have to manage and the challenges. One being false positives. So if they have brought in a system, a lot of them are chasing ghosts. They have to see, maybe it's that alert that came in, no action happened. Is this really bad? What happened here? Is actually, is there a piece of malware on this endpoint that I need to go investigate, possibly remediate? What's going on? Or, oh, it was a fine file, nothing's going on, we're good. And you get so many of those in, and then you start to think, oh, maybe they're all okay. So chasing false positives is a big consuming task that can then change perception of both the product and the results of that product as well. And then as we move on down the line, others were challenged with going from that alert versus action as far as getting a detection and then providing protection, getting it into their systems, getting their policies updated so the environment is protected. So, and it goes on down the line as far as being able to respond, damage control, and others, which included more on the remediation side. So just kind of interesting when we go from looking at, okay, advanced malware, what are the challenges we're faced with today, how it truly isn't just a detection problem, how it goes across, everything you need to do from first off detecting it, but then providing protection and then taking even more action as well. So just interesting results to share with you there. So as we talk about the importance of connecting maybe this new solution or security connected there, really want to just kind of lay the groundwork and say, okay, if you're looking at an advanced threat solution, you really do need to start with, as it says on the slide, start with a solid foundation. So you don't just want a checkbox solution out there. Just say, okay, we're going to get something in, it says it does this, so great, we'll run with it. What you need to do is really look at the capabilities of that solution. So it does need to be a great at detection. It needs to do its job well. And then we also need to look at, okay, so this thing does what it says it's going to do, but now we need to connect it, make sure it's actually enhancing the environment and not just working on a single function. So I'm going to talk here just a little bit to you about what we're doing just from the advanced threat defense solution as far as the different layers within it. Just something to think about as you're evaluating solutions and you think, okay, does this solution also take a comprehensive approach to it? So what you see in front of you here is additional engines that are included. So within the advanced threat defense solution, it is not just a standalone sandboxing solution. What we've done is we've incorporated additional engines. And we've done that for a couple of reasons. Sandboxing, while great, again, as we talked about, it's resource intensive. So if you have something coming into the sandbox, rather than always relying on that sandbox to sandbox or evaluate every sample that's coming at it, look at it from a performance perspective and say, okay, can we knock any of this out? Can we say, okay, we have other technologies to really get rid of the noise or get rid of some of the volume that's coming at it? And that's why we've done things like included AV signatures. We've included things like our global threat intelligence or reputation-based protection there, and also just baseline whitelisting and blacklisting capabilities. If you've seen something before, don't need to scan it again. It's blacklisted next time it comes in, next time it appears. So by doing that, by having some very fast, reliable engines on the front end, you're really able to knock out some of the samples that are coming in. And if by chance you have AV protection on another solution in your network, configurable, so you don't necessarily need that redundant scanning, but maybe you're not using GTI on that other solution and you want to take advantage of it here. So again, very customizable, but really in place to help with performance. Next in line, another engine, and again, this is before we're actually even getting to the sandbox portion, is what we are calling, excuse me, real-time emulation. And this essentially, more often, it's browser-based traffic, so looking at web traffic. It is not necessarily fully executing the file, but it is emulating it. It's understanding the potential of what it could do. And again, this is fast. We're talking milliseconds here, able to really look at it very quickly. And again, this will reduce even more of the noise that's out there. If we get through what we call down selectors, these various engines that you see here, and we're still not able to positively convict something, that's when that sample will move on to our sandbox environment. And what you see here is called static and dynamic analysis. Now, dynamic analysis is generally what we talk about when we talk about sandboxing. So that's that environment where we're actually detonating or executing that file. But what we've done is we've kind of taken that concept of, executing the file a step further. Not only do we want to execute that file, but we essentially want to dissect that file and understand what it is capable of doing. So not only what it will do in the environment, but as we talked about, those other things that it'll do. When those evasive techniques are built into that piece of code, what happens if it doesn't actually detonate? It could still be malicious. We want to be able to understand all of those capabilities and be able to catch. Okay, so just a little bit here going more into that whole concept of within the sandbox, this dynamic and static code analysis. So on the left-hand side, you see dynamic analysis. Again, this is more sandboxing environment. You're going to look at network operations. It's going to see file operations process, essentially what that piece of code, what that file is doing when it executes. But you see down there in the bottom, just one example, may have a delayed execution built into it, some type of evasive maneuver. That's where a technology like static code analysis really comes into play. Essentially, if there's any kind of protection or if it's been packed in any way, we're able to break through that. And that's, again, something fairly unique to the Advanced Threat Defense solution. We're able to get down to the assembly code and really understand what is happening, really look at this code and understand how much of it will actually execute. And then another thing that's important with getting down to that code layer and really looking at it is this code familiar to anything? Does it look similar to anything that we've seen before? And as with McAfee, we have an extensive library of malware. We've been looking at building AV signatures for years, so you can imagine how extensive that database might be. But what we're able to do then is say, okay, this particular piece of code looks an awful lot like, say, this XYZ Trojan. And why that's important is most often code is not net new, written from point A to point Z, net new. It's oftentimes reused. They'll take components of code, they'll modify it slightly so that it will get past more signature-based detection and still execute. So that may be a 60% match, it may be a 2% match, it may be a 98% match, but modified just enough so it's able to evade detection. And that's where static code analysis, by really getting to the level of looking at assembly code and understanding, okay, does any portion of this code match to a known family, and is it significant enough now for us to convict this piece of malware? So very, very powerful approach to looking at what a piece of code can do. And so just to give you a quick example here, a piece of, and we had written blogs, our McAfee Labs group had written a blog about this, a piece of code, and again, we had been tracking this particular Quarian piece of code for a couple of years. It wasn't necessarily new to us, but what was new is it was modified just slightly enough that it was able to identify if it was in a sandbox environment and stay silent. So again, this code, I believe it was 2011 when we first started tracking this particular malware family. But again, it morphs, it changes just slightly over time to stay ahead. So again, this example, if it comes in, because it did stay silent, many sandbox environments or that dynamic analysis aren't necessarily going to see it. But you change that, you don't just look at it from a what has executed, you look at it from what could this code do, actually getting down and looking at the calls that it will make and looking at the code. And you can see here a 66% similarity factor to a piece of a known Trojan, something that we have known about. So again, just a very powerful way to understand evasive malware, very advanced malware, and what it is capable of doing. So a few things to keep in mind as you're looking at kind of that baseline, okay, what should my advanced malware solution be able to do? Okay, so now let's kind of shift from the baseline of, yes, you need a good malware analysis solution to, okay, what does it mean when I bring this thing into my environment? What should it be able to do? So what you see here is kind of the comprehensive approach when you're looking at this. Find is more in that detection arena that we just talked about, but you need to be able to integrate it with existing solutions so you can actually enforce policy and block it. And then also, because things will get through, even if you've detected them, if something has actually gone through to an endpoint, you need to be able to hunt, did it go anywhere else on the network, and then actually take action. So, as we talked about, you've got advanced threat defense focusing on the find aspect, really digging in and finding out, is this piece of code malicious? What we've done here at Intel Security is we have integrated our advanced threat defense solution with a number of our gateway or perimeter solutions, from our network security platform, which is our IPS, to our next-gen firewall, web gateway, and email gateway. Now, these are direct API integrations with these solutions. So what happens is when advanced threat defense finds something, convicts it as malicious, it will automatically update the forwarding solution with that information, and then that solution can either, depending on how the policy is, block it immediately or block any future instances of that particular piece of code. So very effective way, and we'll talk about some examples of why it's important to have those two connected so tightly. That same information then from advanced threat defense is also shared with solutions like our SIM, our Enterprise Security Manager, and then also EPO. So you're able to not only understand what has happened, provide protection at the perimeter, but then also understand, has this happened in the past? So look historically with the SIM, maybe set some watch lists for, do we see this in the future? And then also taking action. So utilizing EPO with those endpoint connections and being able to say, okay, we need to update the policy on this machine, we need to delete this file, we need to take whatever kind of action is appropriate. So let's talk about that integrated approach, and we'll start first with that connection between advanced threat defense, and what you have in front of here is our network security manager, or the management interface for our IPS solution. So what you might notice, it might be a little small on your screen, but what you'll notice on here is there's actually a column within here, and again, this is the NSM, this is the IPS interface, that's called advanced threat defense. So what's interesting about that is it looks more like an onboard engine. So you see some other things here. You've got GTI file reputation, you've got a fingerprint, you've got other things that are listed on here, which are actually engines that are included in the IPS solution. But then you've got advanced threat defense, which is an appliance, but very tightly integrated, but it's showing up essentially as a feature within this product. And what that helps with is giving you the ability to really have very streamlined workflows. So essentially what you're doing is your manager, your admin doesn't necessarily need to move over to another interface. That same interface they're very used to using, they can simply look at that and say, okay, this is coming in as it's any engine that's actually on board, and say, okay, we know this is malicious, and you can see on the left-hand side there, they can immediately take action from there. That action may be grabbing the full results, so if they need a full report, a full file summary, they can get it right through the interface. They, again, don't have to leave, they don't have to go over to that advanced threat defense interface to understand what's happening or to take action, even down to quarantining a machine. So very, very effective way to utilize and bring in really just enhanced security, enhanced detection capabilities to what you already have existing in the network. On this one, this is the integration with Web Gateway. Again, what you're doing is you're essentially just broadening protection of that solution. You're adding another detection layer on. So that solution, the Web Gateway, can now dive in and understand even more, broaden protection. Another nice thing about the Web Gateway is the SSL coverage. So the ability to actually decrypt encrypted traffic and then send over the files unencrypted to Advanced Threat Defense for analysis. A lot of solutions simply cannot do that, especially with an inline advanced analysis solution. SSL not necessarily going to be able to decrypt anything there. So another thing that's really nice about having these very tightly integrated solutions in this example is the end user experience. So with the flexibility of the Web Gateway, you can actually set it to hold a file, so it will not be delivered to an end user while it's being analyzed. You can set it to have it pass through, but if you would like, you can set it to actually have it hold. But rather than the end user not understanding what's going on, keep hitting download, keep hitting refresh because nothing's coming through, they can actually get a download in progress page. So they understand something is happening, they understand that it's actually being scanned. Then the screen behind it, you can see very customizable block page. Now, most of your users would not need this level of detail in their block page, but some of your users might, depending on what area of the organization. But just to show how customizable this information is, this is actually pulling in information from the Advanced Threat Defense report. And so it's pulling it in and it's actually displaying it to the user. This is some of the same information you're going to see on that report, but now you can share it with your end user for education. This could simply be down to, it was malware or this level of detail for certain users within your organization. So we've talked about kind of direct API one-to-one integration with the solutions. So let's take that a step further and talk about integrating not only with the direct API, but what we have that we've fairly recently released called the Threat Intelligence Exchange. So with the Threat Intelligence Exchange, by being integrated with it, Advanced Threat Defense doesn't necessarily need to send information back directly to just a single solution. Now with the Threat Intelligence Exchange, any of the integrated solutions that subscribe to it can now pick up information essentially in real time on convicted files. So let's say the IPS happened to catch something, information could be shared then across the entire organization down to the endpoint for immediate protection, really enabling different systems to share the same threat intelligence information and to share it in real time. And that moves over to the fixed side of the world too, where you're talking about the SIM sharing that same information and EPO as well. So all systems really acting as one when something has been detected and being able to provide protection. So I'll just talk a little bit about TIE, or the Threat Intelligence Exchange, and really kind of the underpinnings beneath it, which we call the data exchange layer, or the DXL, as you might have heard. Essentially what this is, it is the fabric that makes it talk, that makes it happen. So innovative, bi-directional fabric that's really allowing the communication between all of these systems. And again, it's not point-to-point, they're all integrating with the DXL, which is enabling this communication. Think of it as say the human body. Again, very complex system, but it's working in tandem. Let's say you put your hand on something hot. Rather than just your hand having the knowledge or the ability to pull itself back and say, hey, that's hot, danger, it's connecting actually to the brain, and the brain is telling it essentially what to do to lift the hand off, and maybe it's actually communicating with other parts of the body as well to not only protect the hand, but move the body away. So you're getting a step in there and you're getting other movements, you're having other nerve endings reacting at the same time. So it's all working together. And that's essentially what we're talking about when we talk about the DXL and having your security components all working together as well. So you can see here you've got a number of different products from IPS to email gateway, web gateway, and including the endpoint. Information can then go to advanced threat defense to be scanned. Not only advanced threat defense, but having this TIE server enables you to check other sources. Maybe it's checking a different type of reputation from the McAfee GTI or other third-party feeds. Doesn't even necessarily have to be a McAfee feed that it's checking, but just wanting to understand if something is malicious, if anyone else has seen it as well. Local intelligence as well, giving your organization the ability to really control the information, understand if there's a threat that's very local, if there's certain information that you want to have particular to your organization. So really great way to bring everything together. And just to quickly show you what that might look like. So let's say you have something come in, maybe it came in through email, gets sent over, seems suspicious, gets sent over to advanced threat defense. Payload is being analyzed, indicators of compromise are being developed. Information not just back to the email gateway, but as you could see, to all of the systems that are then integrated through this DXL ecosystem are updated in real time. So they all know about this threat that has come in just through the email gateway. So they can all provide protection now. Let's say similar files being maybe sent through an attachment or it's being downloaded off a website. All of those systems can now be protected. And at the same time, that information can also be sent over to the SIM so we can analyze it. Again, you can look back in time. You can find out has this particular file, has this particular instance entered the network in the past, what's happening with it, creating watch lists, and providing protection as well. So it's a really great way for all of your systems to now share information and really function as more of a single solution. So just a couple of examples here. So you're really increasing your visibility so you understand what's happening, not necessarily just after the fact, but while it's happening as well, because it's giving you that ability to understand in real time what is happening. Also, when we're talking about having all of your systems working together as one, you're also going to find that your costs potentially go down and it's going to improve your return on investment because you no longer have to just maintain point-to-point integrations. You're simply maintaining that single integration through the data exchange layer. Very simple way to have all of your systems now talking rather than having more complex API integrations, one-to-one integrations. So a really great way to both improve security, but then also looking at your costs and your return as well. Okay, and finally, as we're talking about this shared security connected, having everything work together, just want to share with you what we talked about earlier as far as having systems on the network and trying to avoid the appliance sprawl or some of the scalability issues. So we could see in that previous, that moved a little fast here, but in the previous instance, if you could look at all of the ingress, the very simple network diagram here, but if you could look at all the entry points and say, okay, even by protocol, I need a particular appliance, I need a specific appliance, dedicated appliance, maybe for my email traffic, my network traffic, maybe I need something in for forensics as well. All of those can be collapsed into a single shared instance of advanced threat defense. If you need more throughput, need more capacity, you can simply add additional appliances there rather than having to place them throughout the network or place them on a protocol-specific basis. So with that, I will end the formal part of my presentation and see if there are any questions out there. And these can be questions on, just kind of talking about that connected security in general, if you had any more specific questions on advanced threat defense. One question here on how it's being sold. So it is an appliance. We do have two appliance form factors today, a 3000 and a 6000. So in the same exact functionality, simply different throughput or capacity. And that is on the lower end about 150,000 objects per day, and on the upper end we're talking more in the range of about 250,000 objects per day. Okay, this question's a little bit longer. Let me see if I can open my questions tab to read the whole thing. A question here, functionality is compatible with Windows XP. The Advanced Threat Defense solution that we talked about does continue to support Windows XP today. So you're able to, if your endpoints continue to use XP, it is supported. And when I say supported by the Advanced Threat Defense solution, what I mean by that is within it, where I talked about you're spinning up a virtual image, you can actually spin up different operating systems to have the threat analyzed in a similar operating system. So if you are using XP, that can be spun up in the virtual environment along with, let's say, Windows 7 or Windows 8. You actually have an Android image you can spin up as well. So by having our connected security, you can actually check with EPO and say, okay, this user, tell me what operating system, what profile I should spin up for this particular user, for this particular request. A question here, can I integrate it with a third-party solution? Talking about advanced threat defense. Today, we do have, as far as Intel Security, has integrated it with our own solutions. So you'll find, as we noted, anywhere from endpoints with our threat intelligence exchange through IPS, NFP, web gateway, etc. So we have worked on those integrations. We do have an API that's available. So if an organization wanted to use that API, they could use it. For the most part, we're finding that organizations are integrating with the McAfee solutions. All right, so I think I have gotten through most of the questions today. So I'll just take a moment to thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate the time. If you have additional questions, there's a lot of information out on our website. And also, I would suggest follow our blogs. Our McAfee Labs group has been publishing more blogs as of late. I think one just came up this week as well, where they're talking about specific evasive malware that's out there and certain types that Advanced Threat Defense has recently detected. So some interesting things that are coming out, and I would recommend following our blog or just poking around on our website a little bit more as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining me. I do appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll see you online sometime again soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, Intel Security, and thank you, all of you, for taking the time out to join us today. I hope you found the webinar useful. I'm sure many of you will have questions to ask. Please give us a call on 01628 418 000 or email us at McAfee@axial.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you and we'll be delighted to help. Finally, you can find out more about us and what we can do for you at www.axial.co.uk, and you can register for next month's webinar at the link you can see on the screen right now. If you do it now, you won't forget later. Thank you. See you next month.